The purple moon hung low over the crimson landscape of Zethros Prime, casting eerie shadows across the jagged rock formations. In the distance, the howl of a shadow maw echoed through the canyon, a sound that would make even the bravest warriors' blood run cold. Commander Vextar pressed his scaled back against the cliff wall, his forearms trembling as he gripped his plasma rifle. Beside him, his hunting party of 12 elite Catharian warriors, the most feared predators in 3-star systems, crouched in terror. "It's been 6 cycles," whispered Zalneth, his serpentine tongue flicking nervously. 6 cycles since we started tracking this beast, and we haven't even seen its shadow." Vextar's golden eyes narrowed. The shadow maw they hunted was just a juvenile, barely the size of their transport vessel. On their homeworld, such creatures were considered mere pests. But here on this death world that the humans called a training ground, everything was different. "Commander," came the voice of tech specialist Mordak through their comm units. "I'm detecting movement 2 clicks north. The creature it's moving toward the human camp." A collective shudder ran through the hunting party. The humans. Those strange pink-skinned bipeds who had arrived on Zethros Prime 3 months ago, claiming they wanted to go camping and have some fun. The same humans who walked around without armor, who laughed at warnings about the planet's deadly fauna, who somehow managed to sleep peacefully under the stars while apex predators prowled nearby. "Sir?" Zalneth's voice cracked. "Should we warn them?" Vextar considered this. The Galactic Confederation had strict protocols about interfering with other species' activities, but these humans, they were allies, technically, and despite their bizarre behavior, they didn't deserve to face a shadow maw unprepared. "Open a channel to the human camp," Vextar ordered. The communicator crackled to life. "Hello there," came a cheerful voice. "This is Jake Martinez. Beautiful evening, isn't it?" Vextar blinked all 4 of his eyes in confusion. Beautiful? The temperature was below freezing. Acid rain was beginning to fall, and somewhere in the darkness, a creature capable of tearing through reinforced titanium was hunting. "Human Jake," Vextar said urgently. "You must evacuate immediately. A shadow maw approaches your position. Class 5 predator, extremely dangerous." There was a pause, then the sound of laughter. "Oh, you mean the big cat-looking thing with the tentacles?" Jake's voice was impossibly casual. "Yeah, we spotted him about an hour ago. Don't worry, we'll keep an eye out." Vextar's mandibles clicked in distress. "Human, you do not understand. This creature has been stalking our hunting party for 6 cycles. It has evaded our most advanced tracking systems. You cannot simply—" "Hold on a sec," Jake interrupted. "Sarah just got back. Hey babe, how'd the evening hunt go?" Another human voice joined the conversation. Female, equally cheerful. "Not bad. Bagged 3 of those shadow cat things. They're pretty quick, but once you figure out their pattern, they're not too hard to track. I've got them strung up by the fire if anyone wants to try some alien barbecue." The comm channel fell silent. Vextar stared at the device as if it had suddenly sprouted tentacles. Did she say 3? Whispered Mordak. "Impossible," Zalneth hissed. "1 shadow maw requires an entire battalion to subdue. No single being could hunt 3 of them." But as they watched through their scopes, they saw lights moving in the human camp below. And there, silhouetted against the campfire, were 3 massive shapes hanging from makeshift wooden posts. 3 shadow maws. Dead. Prepared for cooking. "This changes everything," Vextar muttered, his tactical mind racing. Who were these humans, really? And what else were they capable of? As if summoned by his thoughts, the comm crackled again. "Hey, you alien folks still out there? We've got plenty of food if you want to join us. Fair warning, though, Sarah's stories get pretty wild after she's had a few beers. Something about wrestling a space bear on her last vacation." Vextar looked at his hunting party. 12 elite warriors, armed with the finest weapons in the galaxy, cowering in fear of a creature that a human female had apparently hunted for sport. The night was young, and already, everything he thought he knew about the universe had been turned upside down. What other surprises did these impossible humans have in store? Chapter 2. The gathering storm commander Vexatar made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his considerably long life. We're going down to the human camp. Sir? Zalneth's voice pitched higher than usual. Are you suggesting we abandon our mission? Our mission was to hunt a single shadow maw, Vextar replied, checking his weapons one final time. Apparently that mission is already complete, 3 times over. The descent into the valley took 20 minutes of careful climbing. As they approached the human camp, the smell hit them first, the rich, smoky aroma of cooking meat. Not the sterile processed protein they were used to, but something primal and appealing. The humans had set up their camp in what any sensible being would consider a death trap, a small clearing surrounded by caves and rocky overhangs where predators could easily hide, yet somehow they had turned it into something that looked almost cozy. Jake Martinez stood up as they approached, and Vextar got his first good look at a human up close. The male was unremarkable by most species standards. Average height, no natural weapons, soft pink skin that looked like it would tear at the slightest provocation. He wore simple fabric coverings and what appeared to be primitive footwear. "Welcome to Camp Chaos," Jake called out with that same cheerful tone. "I'm Jake, and this beautiful lady here is my wife Sarah." Sarah looked up from where she was tending to the fire. She was smaller than Jake, with long brown hair tied back in what humans called a ponytail. Like her mate, she appeared completely defenseless. Yet somehow she had single-handedly accomplished what an entire Cytherian strike force had failed to do. How? The word escaped Vextar's mandibles before he could stop it. Sarah tilted her head. How what? How did you kill 3 shadow maws? Our scans indicated they are apex predators. Our hunting algorithm suggested a minimum of 30 warriors would be required for a successful engagement. Sarah and Jake exchanged a look that Vextar couldn't interpret. Then Sarah shrugged. They're basically just big cats with extra parts. You make noise in one direction, they focus on that, you circle around behind them. Pretty standard hunting tactics. But their thermal camouflage, Mordak interjected, his technical mind struggling to process this information. Their quantum-shifted hide makes them nearly invisible to most scanning equipment. Oh, that's neat, Sarah said genuinely. I just followed their tracks and scent trails. Scent trails? Yeah, you know. Sarah tapped the side of her nose. They smell like a cross between wet dog and sulfur. Pretty distinctive once you know what to look for. Zalneth leaned toward Vextar and whispered, "Commander, I'm not detecting any cybernetic enhancements. No genetic modifications. How is she tracking by scent?" Before Vextar could respond, Jake clapped his hands together. "So, you folks hungry? Sarah always cooks way too much food. And that's how 12 of the galaxy's most elite warriors found themselves sitting around a campfire, trying to make conversation with 2 humans who had just redefined their understanding of the possible. So, Sarah said, carving off another piece of shadow maw meat, what brings you folks to Zethros Prime? This doesn't exactly seem like a tourist destination. We are on a ritual hunt, Vextar explained carefully. Young Cytherian warriors must prove themselves by successfully tracking and eliminating a dangerous predator. Oh, like a rite of passage thing, Jake nodded enthusiastically. That's cool. What happens if you don't succeed? Exile, Zalneth said quietly. Permanent banishment from Cytherian space. The mood around the campfire shifted. Sarah stopped, chewing. Wait, you mean if you don't kill one of those shadow cat things you can never go home? That is correct. Sarah looked at the 3 carcasses hanging nearby, then back at the alien warriors. Well, that's a problem. Why? Vextar asked, though something in her tone made his stomach churn. Because I already killed the only 3 shadow maws on this part of the continent, Sarah said matter-of-factly. My satellite GPS shows the nearest. Others are about 800 miles north in the middle of the acid storm region. The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling of the fire and the distant call of some unidentified creature in the darkness. Finally, Jake spoke. Well, that's not necessarily a problem. I mean, you guys helped us out by warning us about the danger, right? And technically, we're all here together. Couldn't this count as a group hunt? Vexitar considered this. Cytherian law was complex, but there were precedents for collaborative hunts with allied species. However, there was one significant problem. The ritual requires that we personally participate in the kill, he explained. We cannot simply claim credit for another's achievement. Sarah stood up and walked over to where her equipment was laid out. She picked up what looked like a primitive projectile weapon. What if we went and found some more? I could teach you guys my tracking techniques. You would do that? Mordak asked incredulously. Share your hunting secrets with us? Sarah grinned, and for the first time, Vextar understood why humans might be considered dangerous. That smile held something wild and predatory. Hell yes, she said. This is the most fun I've had in months. As the night deepened around them, Vextar realized they had stumbled into something far more significant than a simple hunting expedition. These humans were unlike any species in the Confederation database. They were unpredictable, seemingly fearless, and possessed abilities that defied explanation. The question was, what else were they hiding? And more importantly, what would happen when the rest of the galaxy discovered that humanity was not the harmless, peaceful species they pretended to be? The fire popped, sending sparks into the alien sky, and somewhere in the distance, something large moved through the underbrush. The real hunt was about to begin. Chapter 3. The teaching dawn broke over Zethros Prime with the usual display of cosmic violence. Twin suns painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson, while distant lightning storms danced across the horizon. The kind of morning that made most sentient species want to hide in their shelters and wait for a safer day. Sarah Martinez stood at the edge of their camp, breathing deeply of the toxic air as if it were a spring morning on Earth. First lesson, she announced to the 12 Cytherian warriors gathered around her. Stop thinking like predators. Start thinking like prey. Vextar tilted his massive head. I do not understand. Your hunting party is designed for direct confrontation, Sarah explained, shouldering her rifle. Overwhelming firepower, superior numbers, advanced technology. That works great against most creatures, but shadow maws aren't most creatures. They're ambush predators, they're patient, they study their targets for days before making a move. So we should ambush them first? Suggested Zalneth. Exactly. But to ambush something, you have to think like it thinks. You have to understand what it wants, where it feels safe, what makes it nervous. Sarah began walking toward the rocky hills beyond their camp. Jake, you coming? Wouldn't miss it, Jake called back, finishing his morning coffee, a human beverage that smelled like burnt chemicals but somehow made them more alert. As they followed Sarah into the wilderness, Mordak activated his recording equipment. This information could revolutionize Cytherian hunting doctrine, assuming any of them survived to share it. See these scratches on the rock? Sarah pointed to barely visible marks on a stone outcropping. Shadow maws sharpen their claws here, but look at the angle. They're standing on their hind legs when they do it. That tells us they're about 8 feet tall when fully extended. She continued walking, pointing out signs that the Cytherians' advanced sensors had completely missed. Disturbed pebbles that indicated the creature's walking patterns. Scent markers that showed territorial boundaries. Even the subtle way vegetation was bent in certain areas. How do you see all this? Vextar asked in wonder. Practice, Sarah said simply. I grew up hunting with my grandfather in the Montana wilderness. He used to say that every animal leaves a story written in the landscape. You just have to know how to read it. They walked for 3 hours before Sarah suddenly stopped and held up her hand. There, she whispered, pointing to a cave opening, about 50 meters away. Fresh tracks leading in, none leading out. We've got an active den. The Cytherians immediately began activating their weapons and scanning equipment. What are you doing? Sarah hissed. Preparing for combat, Vextar replied, confused by her reaction. Put that stuff away. You're making enough noise to wake the dead. Here's lesson 2. Shadow maws have hearing that's about 4 times more sensitive than yours. All that electronic whirring and beeping you're doing, It's like firing off flares. Reluctantly, the warriors powered down their equipment. Now, Sarah continued, we wait. Wait for what? Zalneth asked. For it to get curious about us. They crouched behind a boulder formation for what felt like hours. The Catherians fidgeted constantly, their warrior instincts screaming at them to either attack or retreat, but Sarah remained perfectly still, watching the cave entrance with the patience of a stone. Then, just as Vextar was about to suggest they try a different approach, a shadow moved within the cave. There we go, Sarah breathed. It knows we're here. Now it's trying to figure out what we are. Slowly, incrementally, a massive form began to emerge from the cave. The shadow maw was indeed about 8 feet tall, with a sleek black hide that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Tentacle-like appendages writhed around its massive head, testing the air for scents and vibrations. Its eyes, 6 of them, glowed with an eerie blue light. It was, without question, one of the most terrifying creatures any of them had ever seen. Beautiful, Sarah whispered appreciatively. The creature took one step forward, then another, its head swiveling as it tried to locate the source of the unfamiliar sense. When I give the signal, Sarah murmured. Vextar, I want you to put one plasma bolt right behind its left shoulder. Zalneth, you take the backup shot if he misses. Everyone else stays put unless this goes sideways. But we should all participate. In the kill, Mordak protested quietly. Trust me, Sarah said. You'll all get your chances. The Shadow Maw took another step forward and Sarah raised her primitive rifle. The movement was so smooth, so practiced, that it seemed like a natural extension of her body. Now, she whispered. Vextar fired. His plasma bolt struck exactly where Sarah had indicated, and the creature dropped instantly, its nervous system overloaded by the energy discharge. Clean kill, Sarah said approvingly. Minimal suffering, maximum efficiency. As they approached the fallen creature, Vextar felt a strange mix of pride and confusion. He had made the killing shot, but somehow Sarah had orchestrated the entire encounter. I don't understand, he said. How did you know exactly where it would emerge? How did you predict its behavior so precisely? Sarah knelt beside the Shadow Maw, examining its claws and hide with professional interest. Because I spent the last 3 days watching this particular animal. I knew its routine, its preferences, its comfort zones. That's the real secret to hunting, information gathering. You've been watching it for 3 days? Zalneth asked incredulously. While you were in your camp, cooking and talking with us? I'm a light sleeper, Sarah said with a grin. And Jake covers for me when I need to do reconnaissance. Jake nodded. Sarah barely needs 4 hours of sleep. Drives me crazy sometimes. As they prepared to move the carcass, Mordak's scanning equipment began chirping urgently. Commander, he said, his voice tight with concern. I'm detecting multiple heat signatures approaching our position, large ones. Sarah looked up from her examination of the dead Shadow Maw. How many? 7? No, 8. Moving fast. Pack hunters, Sarah said grimly. They've smelled the blood. She stood up and began checking her equipment. Gentlemen, it looks like the real lesson is about to begin. From the rocky hills around them came a sound that chilled their alien blood. The hunting cry of a Shadow Maw pack echoing across the landscape like the voice of death itself. Sarah, Jake said quietly, please tell me you have a plan for this. Sarah's grin was wild and fierce. I always have a plan. She turned to address the Catherian warriors. Remember, boys, think like prey, hunt like predators, and whatever happens, try to keep up. The horizon darkened as 8 apex predators began their final approach, and Sarah Martinez started to laugh. The real hunt had begun. Chapter 4. The Pack 8 Shadow Maws moved like liquid darkness across the landscape, their hunting cries creating a symphony of terror that made the very air vibrate. They approached from multiple directions, north, east, and south, with the tactical precision that had made them the apex predators of 17 different worlds. They're trying to surround us, Vextar observed, his voice steady despite the Circumstances good, Sarah said, checking her rifle one more time. That means they're thinking like a pack instead of individuals. We can use that. How is that good? Zalneth demanded, his plasma rifle trembling in all four of his hands. Because pack hunters have predictable behaviors, Sarah explained rapidly. They'll send the youngest and weakest first to test our defenses. The alpha will hang back until it's sure of victory. That gives us time to thin their numbers. She pointed to a formation of rocks about 30 meters away. Jake, take positions there with Mordak and 3 others. Set up a crossfire. When I give the signal, light up anything that moves on the left flank. What about the rest of us? Vextar asked. We're going to do something really stupid, Sarah said cheerfully. We're going to charge them. The silence that followed was broken, only by the approaching howls of the pack. Charge them? Mordak's voice cracked. Into 8 shadow maws? Not into them, Sarah corrected. Past them. Remember, they're expecting us to act like prey, either fight defensively or try to run. We're going to do both at the same time. She began sketching battle formations in the dirt with a stick. The pack will form a semicircle trying to drive us toward the cliffs, behind us. But if we charge directly at their strongest point, the center, we can break their formation and scatter them. That's insane, Zalneth whispered. That's human, Jake called out from his position. Trust her. She once scared off a grizzly bear using nothing but a camping spoon and creative profanity. The first shadow maw appeared on the ridge above them. A smaller one, probably an adolescent, testing their reaction. Sarah tracked it with her rifle but didn't fire. Patience, she murmured. Let them commit. 2 more appeared from the eastern approach, moving with the flowing grace of nightmare cats. Then another from the north. They were forming the expected semicircle just as Sarah had predicted. There, she pointed to a gap between 2 large boulders. That's where the alpha will be. That's our target. How can you possibly know that? Vextar asked. Because that's where I would be, Sarah replied. Best vantage point, multiple escape routes, protected flanks. It's the perfect command position. The pack began closing in, and the air filled with their otherworldly hunting calls. The sound was designed to disorient and terrify prey, and it was working. Even the elite Catherian warriors were beginning to show signs of panic. Breathe, Sarah said calmly. Remember your training. These are just animals. Dangerous animals, but still just animals. A shadow maw broke cover on the left flank, charging directly at their position with incredible speed. Jake, now! Plasma fire erupted from the rock formation as Jake's team opened up. The charging shadow maw stumbled and fell, its hide smoking from multiple hits. 1 down, Sarah announced. Vextar, with me. Everyone else covering fire. And then she did the most insane thing Vextar had ever witnessed. She stood up and began running directly toward the center of the pack's formation, letting out a human battle cry that was somehow more terrifying than the howls of the alien predators. Vextar found himself running beside her, his warrior instincts overriding his rational mind. Behind them, the rest of his squad provided suppressing fire, their plasma bolts lighting up the morning sky. The shadow maws were caught completely off guard. Their carefully orchestrated ambush dissolved into chaos as 2 of their prey suddenly became the attackers. The pack's formation broke apart as individual predators tried to react to this unexpected development. Sarah reached the boulder gap first, her primitive rifle barking as she fired at something hidden in the shadows. There was a roar of pain and rage, and then the alpha shadow maw emerged. A massive creature nearly twice the size of the others, with scars across its hide that spoke of countless battles. It locked eyes with Sarah, and Vextar saw something pass between human and alien predator, a moment of mutual recognition. Hunter acknowledging hunter. Then the alpha charged. Sarah's rifle clicked empty, and she calmly drew what appeared to be a simple metal blade from her belt. The knife looked absurdly inadequate against the massive creature bearing down on her. Sarah! Jake's voice echoed across the battlefield. But Sarah Martinez, housewife from suburban Denver, grandmother of 3, weekend camping enthusiast, did something that would be talked about in Catherian military academies for the next 1,000 years. She smiled. At the last possible second, she dropped into a slide that took her directly between the Alpha's legs. As she passed underneath, her knife flashed upward, finding the one vulnerable spot in the creature's natural armor, the soft tissue at the base of its throat. The Alpha stumbled, its roar turning into a gurgle, and collapsed. Sarah rolled to her feet, covered in alien blood but otherwise unharmed. Around them, the remaining Shadow Maws had scattered, their pack leadership destroyed and their tactical advantage lost. "Mop-up time," she called out cheerfully. "Remember, clean kills. No unnecessary suffering." 20 minutes later, the battlefield was quiet except for the sound of Jake fussing over Sarah's minor cuts and bruises. "You're completely insane," he was saying as he applied antiseptic to a scratch on her arm. "What if you'd missed that vital spot?" "I don't miss," Sarah replied simply. Vextar approached them, still processing what he had witnessed. "How?" he asked again. Sarah looked up at him and he saw something in her eyes that made him take an involuntary step backward. Something ancient and primal, and utterly without fear. "I told you," she said. "I grew up hunting in Montana. But what I didn't mention is that sometimes the things we hunted back home were a lot more dangerous than these shadow cats." "More dangerous than Shadow Maws?" Mordak asked incredulously. Sarah and Jake exchanged one of those looks again. "Earth is what we call a death world," Jake explained. "Everything there is trying to kill everything else all the time. Humans didn't become the dominant species by being peaceful. We became dominant," Sarah added, cleaning her knife, "by being better predators than anything else on the planet. As they collected the bodies of the fallen Shadow Maws, more than enough to satisfy the requirements of the Catherian ritual, hunt." Vextar found himself wondering what other secrets humanity was hiding. They had presented themselves to the galaxy as explorers and diplomats, peaceful creatures seeking friendship and trade. But watching Sarah Martinez calmly field dress an alien apex predator while humming what she claimed was a lullaby, Vextar began to suspect that humanity's reputation for pacifism might be the greatest deception in galactic history. The question was, did the rest of the galaxy know what humans were really capable of? And if not, what would happen when they found out? Epilogue. The report 6 months later, Commander Vextar stood before the Catherian High Council, his report complete, but his superiors' expressions suggesting they thought he had suffered a severe head injury. "Let me understand this correctly," Senior Counselor Thexvar said slowly. "You claim that a single human female eliminated 3 Shadow Maws in one evening hunt, then proceeded to teach your entire squad advanced tracking techniques that enabled you to successfully complete a ritual hunt that had been ongoing for 6 cycles. "That is correct, Counselor. And this same human then engaged an Alpha Shadow Maw in single combat, using only a primitive blade weapon?" "Yes, sir." The council members exchanged glances that clearly indicated they thought Vextar had lost his mind. "Commander," another counselor spoke up, "the human species is classified as Level 2 on the Galactic Threat Assessment Scale. They possess no significant military technology, no enhanced biological capabilities, and their homeworld is considered a garden paradise. How do you explain these claims?" Vextar had been expecting this question. He activated his holographic display and showed the council the recordings Mordak had made during their time on Zethros Prime. The room fell silent as they watched Sarah Martinez methodically track, hunt, and kill creatures that required entire military squads to subdue. They watched her teach advanced tactical concepts to elite Catherian warriors as if she were instructing children. They watched her charge into battle against impossible odds with nothing but a smile and absolute confidence. When the recordings ended, the silence stretched for nearly a full minute. "This is disturbing," Senior Counselor Thexvar finally said. "If humans possess these capabilities, why have they not demonstrated them in any official capacity?" "I believe," Vextar said carefully, "that they consider these to be recreational activities." "Recreational?" The female Sarah referred to hunting apex predators as fun. The male Jake mentioned that she had wrestled a space bear during what they called a vacation. Another long silence. "What are you suggesting, Commander?" Vextar took a deep breath. "I am suggesting that we may have significantly underestimated the human species. Their classification as a level 2 threat may be inadequate." "What level would you assign them?" Vextar thought about Sarah's casual dismissal of creatures that terrified elite warriors. He thought about Jake's matter-of-fact references to Earth's dangerous wildlife. He thought about the implications of an entire species that considered Deathworld survival to be a leisure activity. "Unknown," he said finally. "Potentially unlimited." The council adjourned in chaos, with several members immediately calling for emergency sessions with their military advisors. Within hours, classified intelligence reports began circulating through the upper levels of Galactic Confederation government. Meanwhile, on a small blue-green planet in an unremarkable star system, Sarah Martinez was helping her granddaughter with a school project about family traditions, while Jake planned their next camping trip to what the tourism board was advertising as Australia's most dangerous national park. Neither of them was aware that their weekend hobby had just caused 3 different galactic governments to quietly upgrade their defense systems and add humanity to their species of potential concern watch lists. After all, they were just having fun. But across the galaxy, military strategists were beginning to ask a very troubling question. If humans could do all of this for recreation, what would they be capable of if they ever decided to take something seriously? It was a question that would keep many beings awake at night. And in the depths of space, other predators, creatures that had dominated their regions of the galaxy for millennia, began to take note of the small, pink species that seemed to treat the universe's deadliest hunting grounds as their personal playground. The age of humanity's quiet expansion into the stars had begun. The galaxy would never be the same.